Oh, hi there. We just hired a new crew member, and you know the score. You want to roll out the red carpet for new production workers, give them what they need, but also make sure that they only see what they're supposed to see. And, that can be tricky because you might be juggling with a lot of different logins, like for Dropbox, for Google Drive, for individual tools, etc., etc. And think about it. That might be hundreds of different access points for hundreds and hundreds of different crew members. And that can add up to like 10,000s of variations of different access rights in just one project. And you want to make sure that nothing goes wrong. Sounds scary? Well, no problem. I will show you how our smart, role-based access rights management system will help you along the way. So here's another video for all your hardworking people on set and at the production office. And today's topic is managing access rights for production crew.
She works hard for the money. So hard for it, honey. She works hard for the money, so you better treat her right.
When you think about what your crew should have access to, there's a very simple and very wonderful guideline called the principle of least privilege. It's a common security principle that grants users only the minimum access needed to perform their specific job. Now, you might be a production manager or coordinator and already think, oh my, this sounds already so complicated. Well, no worries. Let me show you how a smart cloud-based system like Yamdu can help you along the way. So first of all, you should only grant the minimum access that is needed for a role. So for example, in Yamdu, you can assign role-based permissions, but this should only be the minimum that the person needs. So I go into the crew section, and there, of course, you can see the name and the position, but also something called the type. And there are different types, some that are called like users. A user is a participant in your production that actually has access to your project. So that means this person registers, and that means they can actually use Yamdu, and that means you should think about access rights. You can see here there are also things like an administrator. We will talk about this in a moment. And there are also things like an open position. So an open position is more related to the recruiting process, but you can already like assign specific access rights to just the position, right? And then later, once participants, real people will get linked to this position, for example, new electricians you hire, etc., all the access rights are already in place, which is great, right? There are also external contacts, but don't worry about external contacts here because they are just part of your crew list and you can use them to, for example, distribute the call sheet, etc. But an external contact does not register, does not need an account, and hence also has no access and does not need any access rights. If you invite already a user, according to the position, Yamdu will actually suggest what would be the default access rights. So you don't have to think about a lot of things because there are kind of hundreds and hundreds of default templates. Of course, the default templates follow the principle of the least privilege. So they're very conservative. So Yamdu's things like, okay, if I invite somebody from the costume design department, probably they might need access to the sizes and measurements of an actress or an actor, but definitely not to the dietary restrictions, and so on and so on. So there are different tutorials that deal kind of with the crew list and the invitation and recruiting process. You can find the link for such a video down below. But today, let's just focus on the access rights. So I will actually switch to another tab called Access Rights. And here in Access Rights, you already have a great overview, like for all your crew members, for all the departments, and see like in one overview who has what access rights in my project. Of course, you can search for individuals, you can search for via an email address, of course, you can search for entire departments and positions and so on and so on. And then you can also sort this. I would recommend, if you like, to sort it by crew list. So you have exactly the same structure as in your crew list, and it also kind of combines the departments, which I think is great if you think about access rights and want to make sure like people in one department probably have very, very similar access rights. Then you can also filter, by invited users. So, they got an invitation, but they have not yet registered. And they're just those little icons here. in front of them to see. And here on the very right in the context menu, you have different options, like, for example, to resend the invitation, to copy the invitation link to your clipboard. So if you want to send it via, Slack or WhatsApp or whatever. It just eases the process of inviting those people and managing them. Now let's take a closer look here for our producer, Marty McFly. You see to the right all the features that are activated and enabled in your particular project. So if you're not using certain features, for example, because you're shooting a documentary, etc., then of course you also will not see those here in the table for all your access rights. And it's very simple to distinguish, like the little pen icon obviously means that you can edit something. The eye icon means you can only see it. You have the read access, right? And then, of course, this lock means, okay, this is hidden. This, it's restricted. This person like Marty McFly can actually not see this feature at all. And we will see in a moment what this actually all looks like from Marty's perspective. What's important here for the crew area, see this column here, if you provide edit access, so the little pen icon, this means this person can actually edit the crew list and the access rights also together with admins. So that's also why we have this little warning here that you're absolutely sure who can manage things in here. Let's click here on this area. So this opens a window again with an overview, but with more details. For example, the files and documents area. So that's kind of the file sharing area, and we see what Marty has access to. And this, by the way, is built dynamically, right? So because you might add more folders and binders and documents and all that stuff. And then what's very, very special about Yamdu, and I think also about our industry, is what we call here sensitive information, right? So those are things you should really take care of. And here the default settings are very, very conservative, because that actually means people can see like eating habits, allergies, as you can see here. So this is very granular. And again, of course, you could also bulk edit this entire area if you want to grant Marty like access to everything, or just take it away in one step. And then there's the tab for the company databases. So as you know, while your crews are working with Yamdu on projects, they automatically populate the databases for your production company, for like all the crew members across your projects, actors, agencies, locations, and all that stuff. And that can potentially be reused, of course, in this particular project here. And then there's the tab for time cards, which only matters if you use Yamdu for the timekeeping purposes of your production crew. And in this case, for example, we can say, well, right now, Marty McFly has no access at all to time cards, but I can change this. And this is following kind of the approval rights principle and the access levels for time cards. So the user access means that this person can only, enter times like work start, meal one end, work end, stuff like this, right? So they just enter times and submit it. There is a different tutorial on all those approval rights, including also, as you can see here, the department approval, where I can see immediately that Marty would be part of the production department, so he can approve time cards of his department. And there's also the production approval right and the accounting approval right. But again, this is explained in a different tutorial, and you will find the link below. And then again, you just have an overview of all the features. That's exactly the same as we saw before in the table overview, just in this case, just for this one participant, Marty McFly. And of course, again, you can like edit all of them, bulk edit, etc. Of course, you can see you can also edit all this in the table directly for all the features and also for the time cards. So no matter if you go into the window or you do it in the table overview here, it always comes down to the same. And one great thing is kind of bulk editing. So you can select several crew members or even entire departments, like here the art department, and you can actually edit all the access rights for an entire department, several departments, and of course also for those selected participants with just one click. But what you can also do, you can select one or several crew members or departments and say, well, please reassign the same access rights as we already have like for a different crew member. So for example, here we want to assign Steve Johnson's access rights to all those other people people and even an entire department, and we just use the copy access rights feature. That's an easy way to say, well, for my light and grip department or for my costume department, I basically just want to use the very same as I have for this specific crew member. Now, what's special for serialized productions, you know that a Yamdu project can be divided into different episodes, or also like episodes combined to a shooting block, etc. No matter what structure you want to use, you can also restrict the access to specific shooting blocks and or episodes. And I just click here, and then I can select what shooting blocks, what episodes Marty should have access to, right? And limit this. So if I switch to Marty's account, you can see here that actually he does not even see a lot of the things that is related to episodes. Well, it's the principle of the least privilege, right? It can also be time-based because you only need access to a project, for example, while you are on contract, while you're working on this project. And as you can see here, if you don't do anything else, it's kind of unlimited. So you actually need to manually kick out a person off a project, remove as it is called here. But you can also say, like, from day one, I want to restrict the access to the project for a limited time. And you can do this here. And you can either set like a custom date, right? You say, like, I don't know, this person only needs access until the 31st of December of this year. But you can also use this option here, contract end. So this means there is an area in the profile of a crew member that's called contract. And there you see two potential end dates. It's either the last day of employment per contract or the last day of employment actual, because maybe you need to prolong the shoot, you need this electrician or this wardrobe person a couple of days longer, etc., etc. So Yamdu actually takes the latest of both potential dates, if they exist, of course, that is. This does not mean that this person gets deleted, right? The participant is still part of your crew list and everything that he or she has done, but they do not have access to the project anymore. So all of this means, you can go, if you want, very granular. So let's assume, for example, that for Marty, in a certain case, we only need one access right. For example, only that Marty can actually see the crew list, right? To call people, fellow crew members, etc. Or maybe we just want to add one tiny little additional access right, like this tiny little key, for example, to activate the user level for time cards, so Marty can actually use the time card feature for time tracking. And maybe that's it. And maybe that's all we need for one particular crew member. So that's pretty unique about Yamdu, how granular you can get when it comes to the access rights of all those media production specific features and areas. And then you saw before there's something called, administrators, project administrators. So a very, very important topic is also to separate kind of the administrative rights from the everyday use rights. That's very, very important. And in Yamdu, actually, there are two options what you can do here. So first of all, there's something called a project administrator. So a project administrator has kind of the largest key within the project because he or she can access everything within one project, which means you don't have to think about individual access rights for these people. They can actually see and edit everything. That also means they can do stuff like editing the access rights, for example, and invite users, remove users, etc., etc. But then there's even like a higher right, even more, right? And those are the company admins. So you also see here, and you filter for administrators, they could also be company administrators. And that's kind of the highest right you can have in Yamdu. So those are the two potential admins. A project admin can do everything in one project, and then a company admin can do everything in the production company. So let's put those keys over here. All right. And then there's the last aspect of the principle of least privilege. That means you should review and monitor all those access rights regularly. So a producer, for example, should schedule like internal audits and just check if everything is still in place. And that's really the power of Yamdu here, because you have this one great overview where you can see who has currently what access rights. But that's not everything. You can also see those access rights in the particular areas of Yamdu. So for example, if I go to the scenes overview, I always see who has access, kind of read, write, or no access at all in this particular feature. And the same, of course, like throughout, the staff form or the general information of a profile, etc., etc. So you can always make sure that you see who has access to a particular feature that I'm currently working in, right? And by the way, what's also great, because we hope we do another project with Yamdu, so if you create a project and use an existing project as a template, you can also just say, well, take the entire crew or just take the crew structure, which basically means the open positions then, right, for the new project. But this will also copy all your access rights. So again, if you use Yamdu again for a second project, another season of your show, etc., etc., you can actually take over the entire structure, including the access rights for your crew list. All right, so I hope it's not that hard after all to manage access rights in a tool like Yamdu. And of course, if it comes to security in film production, there are many, many other different aspects and more aspects actually than just managing access rights. And if you're interested in those topics, I would highly recommend to take a look on the website of, for example, Movie Labs. There you can find case studies, best practices, etc., etc. Also, for example, TPN, Trusted Partner Network, they're kind of specialized in this field, and you will find a lot of resources on the topic. You will find both links below in the description, and of course Yamdu is also a member of both associations. So I have to admit, talking about access rights management is quite exhausting. So I'm glad it's done and everything is set up correctly for my crew. I really feel comfortable about this. And finally, it's time to go home. Well, if I find my keys, that is. Well, anyways, if you think this video is useful, please click like and subscribe. And always remember, she works hard for the money.
She works hard for the money.